recording.
Thank you. Right, members, we'll start the meeting. Clock. Good morning and welcome to the North East Scotland Agricultural Advisory Group meeting. We have our usual reminders to briefly review. Please note that the meeting will be recorded and published online for public viewing after the meeting. Can members joining from home activate their cameras where possible, and can attendees mute their microphones when not speaking? If members wish to speak at any point, whether joining in person or via Teams, please notify the chair by using the raise hand function. If any member loses contact or has technical issues during the meeting, please alert the committee officer, Michael Schlitzwitz. I also intend to take a comfort break partway through our meeting and we'll schedule that at an appropriate time. So, item 1, I would like to extend a welcome to our 2 new members, Councillor Ross Craig and Councillor Louise Nicholl, joining us from Angus Council. I'm not sure if they're on this call. Can't see them, so welcome them in any case. Can the committee officer please take us through the settlement of councillors present by roll call? Michael.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with the Aberdeenshire Council. Councillor Goodall.
Present.
Councillor Victor.
Present.
Councillor Chapman.
I'm here.
Councillor Black. Councillor Joji.
Present.
Councillor Taylor. Councillor Walker. Councillor Finlater. And finally, Councillor Chuterby. Okay, I'll move on to the Aberdeen City Council. Councillor Clark. We've received apologies from Councillor Clark, sorry. Councillor Crockett. Councillor Farquhar. We have also received apologies from Councillor McGregor from the Aberdeen City Council, and finally Councillor Van Sweden. Moving to the Angus Council, Councillor Breas. Councillor Gull.
Present. Yeah.
Present.
Sorry, yep. Councillor Gregg. And Councillor Nicholl. And finally, the Moray Council. Oh, sorry. Good morning. Who was that? Sorry.
Councillor Nicholl.
Oh, good morning, Councillor Nicholl. And finally, moving to Moray Council, Councillor Robertson.
Here.
Good morning. And Councillor Van der Horn.
Here.
Good morning. Chair, we have 9 members present. I do apologize. I should have mentioned at the start that we received apologies from Councillor Evison with Councillor Victor substituting. And we've received 2 apologies from the Aberdeen City Council with Councillor McGregor and Councillor Clark sending their apologies.
Thank you for that.
And if I can butt in, Michael, Councillor Taylor, Aberdeenshire, is also present. I didn't reach the unmute button in time, sorry.
No problem at all. Chair, we have 10 members present.
Thank you. Members are requested to agree to the equality statement. If you do not agree, please indicate via the raise hand function now and I will bring you in. I take it we all agree. Members are asked to approve the minute of 26 November 25 as a correct record of proceedings. If you've read the minute, could you indicate if you have any issues with it, please, by the raise hand function? Minute is therefore agreed. So our first speaker is Sean McLean, Environmental Protection Erosion Prevention presentation. Sean McLean is HBB GEO. Are you with us, Sean?
Hello, yes, I am. Morning.
Okay, morning. You got me worried there. Okay, Sean, leave it to, I'll pass over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, and hopefully we can get this up and running. We are based down just outside Forfar on a farm, and the internet seems to be taking its time to load up here.
We can see your presentation on the screen if that's of any use.
You've got it, have you?
Yeah.
Oh, you're one step ahead of me then.
It's just dropped off and I think it might be loading again.
Right, okay. Now I know why Keith asked me to send across a hard copy. Have you got that now? No?
It says we couldn't share the file now, try again.
Let's try again then.
I'm also happy to try to share, but I see your slides now. And
You've got them?
I can
Yep,
see
there
them.
we
And
go.
for some reason, I can navigate them forward for you.
We're in action now. So you've got the introductory page there of a nice field of oilseed rape in the background. So we're happy everyone can see, yeah?
If everyone can see, I
Yes.
can't.
Yep.
I can see now.
It's probably my system, so you just go on without me. Ian,
Okay.
I can't
No
give your
see.
hand up.
And I'm the same as you, Chair.
Okay.
Me likewise, I haven't got it either, Jeff. No.
Okay. May I suggest that Michael shares it from his end and you just ask him to move along in the slides as needed? Would that be a reasonable solution?
So,
Michael, can you take over?
yeah, of course I can. Give me just a moment, Chair.
Thank you, Michael. I can see, but it kept dipping in and out as well. I'm not sure, just
Of course,
maybe some
no
people
problem.
have got stronger receptions than others, but thank you.
So I only have the PDF. So was there any videos in your
No, there's no
slides?
no videos. No.
No problem.
Hmm.
Just let me know when to change over to the next slide, okay?
Yes,
Uh,
sure, no problem at all.
I can see it now. Are you okay, Ian?
Yep, thank you.
I see Councillor Mark Finletter's trying to get into the meeting.
Give me a second. Okay, I think that's us sorted.
So we're all good to go.
Yep, just whenever you're ready. And please tell me when to move forward.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll do. Thanks, Michael. Okay, I'm Sean McLean from HBB Geosales. We're based just outside Forfar, and we'll take maybe just 5-10 minutes to give you a brief outline of what HBB do and what we have to offer. And then if there's any questions at the end, please feel free. So next slide, please, Michael. So HBB were established in 2010 by Bruce Craik, mainly focusing on supplying and installing into the landfill sector with liners for temporary capping. And over the next sort of 7 to 8 years, the business grew and developed into providing covers for stockpile, things like resilience salt piles at ports, and this is still an important part of the business today. Around about 2017, as the business was growing, we saw an opening in the market for pre-welded panels of liner. So we invested quite heavily in a welding plant and machine from the States, which gave us a bit of a niche in the UK market. And at the time, I think there was only one other company in the UK was able to provide pre-welded panels with liner. This helps reduce waste on site and also cuts down on the amount of volume required and gives them a specific size for the liner as opposed to having to buy in roll form. As the business grew into 2022, we outgrew our premises in Forfar and moved to a larger facility about 5 miles to a farm just outside the town, which gave us much larger storage area, improved loading facilities, and it also at that stage allowed us to diversify into erosion control and hydroseeding, which complemented some of our existing work. We now employ 13 people across the business and currently we're probably seeing our highest turnover year to date, and it's looking like being one of the most profitable as well. So business is growing well, and it's a fast-moving business, family business as well. So it's quite a small team, and we've all worked well together, and I think that's part of our selling point, and it's certainly helped our growth. Can we have the next slide, please, Michael? Our products are designed to help protect and restore. Liners are used in multiple applications, from stormwater management, water harvesting, irrigation lagoons, invasive weed barriers, to stockpile covers, which prevents leaching and pollution. And our erosion control products are used in restoration of peatland, embankments on motorways, and also rivers and riverbanks. And as mentioned, one of our unique selling points is we can provide our liners in pre-welded panels, which results in a quicker installation time, reduced cost and wastage. And smaller quantities can be ordered, which again reduces cost of haulage. Next slide, please. Our divisions can be broken down into probably 5 areas or different solutions. So we have erosion control, geosynthetic products, hydroseeding, our net down anchor system, and installation. Next slide, please. The erosion control solutions, we moved into this sector. It kind of came off the back of projects we were involved with on the geosynthetic lining. There was a requirement for coir-based products to prevent erosion control, or to help erosion control, sorry, on banks of attenuation ponds. So we saw an opportunity to add value to the projects we're already involved in. And our main solutions would be coir geotextile, coir matting, and coir logs, and they're used, as I say, in riverbank restoration, attenuation pond banks, and also peatland restoration, which is obviously quite a hot topic at the moment, and there's a lot of investment going into that.
Sean, could I interrupt for a second? Fatima informs me that the screens aren't joining properly. Fatima, could you explain?
Yes, we're seeing the previous slide instead of the current one that he's on. Yeah.
Oh, that's Michael. Michael, are you aware?
Sorry, Michael.
Are you seeing control solutions right now, or?
Yes, we should be on the next slide. Sorry, Michael.
Apologies. Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Michael, while you're here, could you check and see if Councillor Findlater has an invite? He's been trying to join the meeting.
Just let me know when you're good to go again.
I think if you continue, Sean, we'll sort everything else out behind the scenes, hopefully.
Right, no problem at all. So yeah, as I say, the different applications for the coir would be riverbank protection, peatland restoration, which is quite a hot topic at the moment with Scottish Government as well. Could we have the next slide, please, Michael? Thank you. So coir is made from a husk, a coconut husk, and it's imported directly from Sri Lanka and India. And I suppose one of the questions we often get asked about is the carbon footprint of coir, how it can be justified, but currently there's not really many viable alternatives for it. There is some trials going on of wool and hemp products, which are produced in the UK, but they're very expensive. So currently there's a bit of a trade-off between cost and environmental impact, which I suppose happens on a daily basis. The coir products, the geotextiles, is like a mesh, which you're seeing in that image on the right-hand side. So it's a mesh which comes in different sizes and also weights, and the tighter the mesh, the heavier the weight. So it's measured in grams per square meter. The matting is more like a blanket with jute or coir thread that keeps the fibers together, and they're fixed onto the ground by either wooden pegs or steel pegs. and then they vegetated by broadcasting specific seed, grass seed, or whatever seeds required underneath, and then laying the mat. Or you can also use hydroseeding, which is another solution which we offer. It can also be pre-seeded, but the pre-seeding matting is very expensive. So it's probably more cost effective to be broadcasting seed and then laying the matting. And it would naturally break down within 3 to 5 years. So the images that you're seeing there, the one on the left-hand side, that was a blanket for Angus Council on a bank, which was eroding. They were struggling to get vegetation established on that bank. So we used the matting, and then it was seeded to give them, it was a sort of a wildflower finish they were after. And then the center picture is an attenuation basin for stormwater management. They were again trying to establish vegetation, so they used the coir matting to help bring that along. You have the next slide, please, Michael. The coir logs that we supply, so again, a coconut-based product, compacted coir husk, which is then formed into a roll, and there's a coir twine or jute twine which holds it all together. We're seeing them used a lot in peatland restoration work, which is the images that you're seeing just now, where they're used to create dams in gullies that are eroding quite heavily. This allows the dam sediment washed up against the back of it, and then the area floods and becomes re-wetted, which then encourages growth of sphagnum. They can also be used in a similar fashion on river banks where they're pegged in to the bank side, and that prevents erosion, and any soil eroding behind it builds up and starts to form the bank again. They come in different lengths and diameters, ranging from 1 meter to 3 meter and 30 centimeter diameter. Can we have the next slide, please? Oh, sorry, you've gone to, we're one ahead. Sorry, Michael, can you go back one? Geosynthetic products.
Can I disturb you again, Sean, if you don't mind? Ian,
Certainly.
you have your hand up?
It was just a comment that the slides are out of sync with Sean's commentary, where I'm now seeing a slide on geosynthetic products.
That's where we should be, and that's where we should be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the other sector we have is the geosynthetic product, and that's probably the largest part of our business. This is supplying liners for ponds, contaminated soil, digestate lagoons, invasive weed barrier, landfill, stormwater management. And they're predominantly made from HDPE, which is high density polyethylene, LLDPE, linear low density polyethylene, and our Power Scrim range, which is a woven HDPE scrim and has a film on both sides of an LLDPE film. And as I say, they're predominantly used in lining applications. Could we have the next slide, please, Michael? The applications are very wide across this product range, but what you're seeing here probably more related to the audience today and agricultural base. There's liquid fertilizer buns, that's on the left hand side, and in the background there's a sprayer bay wash. That was a 1 mil HDPE liner that was provided. And then in the middle one, that's a pond. It was a wildlife pond at a caravan site, which is using our Superflex material. And that pond was provided in two panels, so it reduced the welding on site and made installation very quick. And then on a more industrial side of things, you have on the right hand side a stockpile cover for a salt pile. So this is preventing erosion and leaching into waterways, and obviously loss of the salt product as well. And that's a 2-layer system. So the green that you're seeing is a green mesh called net down, and that diffuses the wind. So it gets away from having tires and bags on the surface and it reduces any chance of the wind lifting the liner underneath. Other applications are contaminated soil, invasive weed barriers, so your Japanese knotweed, that type of thing. If you're creating a cell, it can be used for that, and the knotweed is buried in the cell. Could we have the next slide, please, Michael? Hydroseeding. So hydroseeding, I'm not sure if you're aware, is a method of applying water, seed, and a mulch in a slurry form, and it's sprayed on just like you're seeing in the image here by a hose, and it's attached to a tank of varying sizes, and it's used for vegetating airport runways, golf courses, haul roads, and areas where it's maybe not accessible for conventional seeding. It's quite cost-effective method for seeding large areas quickly. The mulch also provides protection for the seed until it's germinated, and it can help retain moisture during soil establishment. There's various different types of mulch available, and depending on the application, so it can also be used in erosion control. When it's used on runways at the side of airports, it's being used to protect the seed against birds feeding on the seed, so it's reducing bird strike in the airports. Next slide, please. So just a couple of images here of how it would be used. So the image on the left is vegetation for a wind farm haul road. And then central is quite local to you guys. We were doing a bit of work up at Trump International where they were wanting to seed some pathways for the spectators. And then up at Strathpeffer, we did a burn realignment, and it was hydroseeded. The seed mix can be very specific. So if it's a wildflower, or in certain occasions, the wind farm, for instance, they wanted a seed mix that matched the existing vegetation for re-establishment. That was part of the process for the haul road. Your next slide, please. So we work across various sectors: agricultural, land management, industrial, brownfield development, invasive weed management, bulk material storage, and stormwater management. The stormwater management is a very large part of the business. So pretty much every development nowadays has some sort of stormwater management, whether it's attenuation tanks or attenuation ponds, and they tend to have a liner involved in that project. Today we're sort of speaking more on agricultural base, but if there's anyone interested in the other sectors, I'm more than happy to speak later on, or you'll have my contact details. You can get in touch. Next slide, please. So the main areas in agricultural and land management for our products would be erosion control, peatland restoration, and I'm not sure, it's not in Michael's slide, but there is actually a bit of funding available at the moment from the Agri-Environment Climate Scheme for lagoons, if it's used for irrigation, potentially also for fighting wildfire and fire in remote areas. So if you're creating a reservoir, and as I say, if you Google Agri-Environment Climate Scheme 2026, that should take you to the rural payments page and give you a bit of information on the funding for this scheme. And that's aimed at lagoons for irrigation, and as I say, so possibly firefighting as well. The image you're seeing there is for a liquid fertilizer bund. It's not yet compulsory to have a liner in these bunds, but it is best practice, and it is encouraged by the suppliers of the liquid fertilizer to avoid any potential leaks from damaged tanks. Digestate lagoons is another area where we're seeing quite a large growth from AD plants. They're storing their digestate for use later on. Irrigation also, so potatoes, it's reckoned if you're using an irrigation system, you would get payback within 5 to 8 years of investment for the irrigation lagoons. Hydroseeding is probably less required in the agricultural sector, because obviously you've got the kit to do the seeding yourselves, but some areas where there's maybe erosion control or not as accessible for the machinery that you have. Your next slide, please, Michael. These are just a few images to give you an idea of what we're doing. So the top left is our agricultural sort of sprayer wash bay in the back, and then the ferret bund. The center image is was a wind farm road haul road. It was a 2 application of the hydroseeding mulch, so the soil was obviously very poor. So we needed to put in a soil enhancement and then hydroseeded on top. And then that's the image again of Angus Council's small embankment. And a wildlife pond on bottom left. And that's one of the guys in the middle there just doing a bit of welding on site, joining a couple of panels. Next slide, please. Again, there's just another few images of what we do. So that's pretty much me. Next slide, I think, Michael, and thank you very much for your time. It's been great to present to you. If you're down at the Highland Show this year, I don't know if any of you attend the Highland Show, we've got a stand down there, so you're more than welcome to come along and say hello. And if there's anything else that you'd like to discuss, your contact details are there, or I'm sure we can send them across.
Thank you, Sean. That was a very interesting presentation. I did have some questions, but you answered them through the presentation. So that was actually quite good. Before we go into questions, could I ask Councillor Finletter to agree to the statement of equalities, etc.? Mark, are you
as soon
there?
as I get my breath, Chair, yeah. It was a real struggle getting into this meeting because I wasn't sent an invite.
Okay,
I'm in Woodhall House now. I contacted everybody, but nobody wanted to speak to me. So I'm in now, and I agree your equalities, Chair. And at some point, well, I was wanting to put a motion in, but that can wait, Chair.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Iris, you have a question?
Not a question. Apologies. I was struggling to get into the meeting as well, so I missed the first bit, but I agree to equalities. I have no declarations of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Is anyone else in the same situation? Kenny and Kathleen, you've got your hands up. Is that just for a question?
Well, mine's a question.
That's fine. Okay, Kenny, your question, please.
Yes, well, thanks for the presentation, very interesting. And I was wondering, is there a geofilm available that could be put down as a weed suppressant, but then you could hydroseed directly on top of that film? Is there such a thing?
Not that I'm aware of, no. No.
You would have to put some soil on top of it first.
Yes.
And as a wee supplementary then, could you hydroseed directly onto coir?
Yes, you can.
Yes.
And that's one of the processes. So when we got involved in the hydroseeding, and the coir sort of fitted alongside. So that's one of the ways that you can vegetate the coir matting, is by hydroseeding.
And finally then, is coir as effective as a geofilm for weed suppression?
It will be to a certain extent, and then I suppose naturally you would get weeds coming through, or
Seeds
established from the way.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks.
No problem.
Thank you for those answers. and questions. Kathleen, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Two actually. One's quite specific and one more general. So I'll start with the specific one, which is about, you mentioned invasive weed management. And I'm just wondering what engagement you have for dealing with things like the giant hogweed, which obviously also has a public health component to it. So I'm wondering what engagement you have with agencies over that. And my second question, again about engagement with public sector, is just really interested about the lagoon thing that you have. I'm just wondering, have you got engagement with forestry, the national parks? Obviously, we had the big wildfire in Murray last year, and it just seems that there's an opportunity there. And how quickly can we get some of these things potentially looked at, investigated, explored, and actioned?
You give me a PO today, I'll start processing a liner for you tomorrow. No, joking aside, on your invasive weed, the hogweed, our application is more for you would create a cell as opposed to stop it burying. So instead of taking, for instance, Japanese knotweed off site, it would be retained on site. A cell would be created, and the contaminated earth would be placed in the cell, and then it's retained on site. It can also be used as a barrier to, say, between two properties. You would put the liner in and prevent the knotweed or invasive weed spreading into a neighbouring property. It's not for likes of your giant hogweed, which I would imagine is controlled by herbicide. Would be one of the methods, I would imagine. So we're not really involved in that type of invasive weed management. On the second point, as I say, joking aside about the liners, we don't have it very much direct engagement with like national parks. I think we've done bits and pieces with some of them on the Coir side of things with the peatland restoration, but the lagoon side of things from the firefighting perspective is something that we've probably just become aware of maybe in the last 6 months. We were at a conference quite recently and the topic came up. It was we were speaking to a farmer within the park, and they'd mentioned, obviously the issues they have with water. So that's kind of what got us thinking into that side of things.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Findlater.
Thanks, Chair, on that one. It's not necessarily a question, it's to yourself and to the legal officer, committee officer. I was wanting to come in at the start of the meeting to put a motion in, an emergency motion. It is a positive one, Chair, honest. I actually came into Woodhill House because I was expecting somebody to be here, but I didn't realise it was all virtual. I should have looked closer. I don't know what the process is there as far as standing orders is concerned for that. But if you can maybe bring me in after the questions and this, and I'll explain myself. But I did try to contact all of you to try to get in about a quarter of an hour before the meeting, and I could not get in, the committee officer included. So I am out of breath, but I still want to put forward a motion, Chair, so it's within your gift as to when you do that or as to when the legal officer says that I can.
Okay, we don't usually have a legal officer in attendance. Could you have a quick word with Keith? Keith, could you liaise with Mark to discuss his proposed motion, please?
Yes, I will do, Chair. Mark, do you want to email me directly, please? Just we can take that off the meeting at the moment.
If you come off, and we'll just go through the call if you want, and I'll explain to you.
If you could email us, easiest, please, if that's okay, Councillor.
What I'll do is I'll Teams message you. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Right. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Keith. Fatima, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have two. So one's more on your wider economic development, and the other one is looking more at environment and sustainability. So just on the wider economic development, it's really great to see a business like yours growing as well and sharing positive benefits too. And I've just wondered, in terms of your growth, it's just out of curiosity, what skills you found are hardest to recruit for, and if there's any gaps that you found in the local labour market. And in terms of environmental and sustainability, so you've you had a really useful slide on the geosynthetic products, and I was just wondering what the expected lifespan was for these products and, well, for these materials, and what happens at the end of their useful life. Thank you.
Okay. From our growth perspective, we take on quite a lot of young guys. As I say, we're a small family business with 13 employees, and we've found we probably don't go down the traditional channels of recruitment. A lot of it is word of mouth. As I say, we've got a couple of young guys, so they'll maybe say, well, one of my friends is looking for employment, and they'll get trained up when they come in. So we do have quite a young team, and probably contrary to maybe what the beliefs are about young people nowadays, the guys that we have fit in really well, and yeah, we've got a really good mix of old people like myself and younger guys as well. So we probably don't go out into the market in a traditional recruiting sense. On the material lifespan, so each of the geosynthetics has got a different lifespan, ranging from between 15 to 20 years for the liners if they're exposed to UV. Quite a lot of the applications, they'll not be exposed. So if it's an attenuation bond, for instance, so the lifespan of that is almost indefinite.
Okay, do you want to come back on anything, Fatima?
No, that's helpful and useful. Thank you. And it's great to see that you're employing young people as well, and you've got such a positive attitude towards that as well. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, do you have a question?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Sean. Excellent presentation. Really enjoyed it. Obviously, the geosynthetic materials, and I'm guessing with the scrum would be particularly tear resistant, and it'll cope with going over stones or rocks, or is there a sand bed put in and then the material over the top is the first bit. On the hydroseeding slide, there was an abbreviation of MSE. What is it?
So I'll answer that first. So MSE, that's mechanically stabilized earth. So it's an option. Instead of a retaining wall, it's bags which are filled with a sand and compost mix. They look like sandbags basically.
Yeah.
And so that's a retaining method, and the preferred way of getting them to vegetate. So it's a green wall solution, if you like.
Of course.
The preferred way to do that is by hydroseeding, because you're using a very specific mulch that sticks to the bags.
Yeah. Okay.
On your geosynthetic side of things, while the liner is obviously got a high puncture resistance, so you would always recommend you either, as you say, use a sand bed, normally 200 to 300 mil, or there's a non-woven geotextile, which is like a fleece that's used as a protective layer between the ground and where the liner is placed. And in some instances, you would also put a fleece layer on top as well to give it that added protection.
So a built-in braces approach almost.
Sorry, yes, exactly. Yeah.
And my last question was following on from Kathleen. I think it would have been in terms of invasive weeds. If it's just a physical barrier, seeds, there will be some seeds that will be air dispersal. And I get the point in terms of gathering up all the soil, and I presume enclosing it within some sort of mound heap with the geosynthetics, such it prevents further germination, further growth. But the air dispersal, I'm guessing, is not something you're able to combat.
No, and when I speak about on site, it's contained so that they create a cell, so it's got a lid on it as well, if you like. So the contaminated soil is held within a sealed cell, so that the roots in that can't grow out of the cell, if you like. But certainly anything that's airborne, if there's something from a neighbouring site, then you don't have a lot of control over that.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for that. Those questions and answers. Councillor van der Horn, can I ask Drake if were you late into the meeting? Did you have any issues?
No, I was late. Well, I wasn't late into the meeting, but I got caught in a rainstorm when I was outside and lost all my connection, so I had to rejoin, and I missed some of the presentation, but caught bits and pieces of it. So apologies if some of this has been discussed, but my main point I wanted to raise, that's perhaps slightly been touched on, is my concern is around microplastic pollution. And I realise that some of these geomembranes are there to prevent, in some cases, toxic runoff, but in and of themselves can become an issue around pollution. So I'm just wondering what measures are being taken to monitor that, and what preventative measures are being taken. Thank you.
We as a company don't actually do any monitoring of that type of thing. All the materials are produced from virgin materials, so there shouldn't be any pollution from microplastic. They're specified and tested from a manufacturing point of view. So, but as far as HPB go, we don't actually do any monitoring of the liners that we're providing. Maybe that's not the answer you're wanting, but that's that's the reality.
Do you want to come back?
That's the answer that you're giving me. I mean, of course, it's a plastic and it degrades, so therefore it releases the polymer structure of itself to produce microplastic. So that's where my concern lies. But thank you for your answer.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Keith, do you have a question?
Yes, if I may, please, Chair. It was just to thank Sean for his talk, and also I was interested to hear a bit about riverbank erosion. And I know from being an Inverurie resident, we have some concerns with some areas of bank erosion and various bits and pieces. I'm just wondering, do you do much work in that area, or is that an expanding bit of your business? Because I can see, given the flash flooding we seem to be getting and having farmland in and around Inverurie here, just some of the causes and concerns, and just wonder, from the coir matting point of view, or the core barriers point of view, that it seems quite an effective way of looking at some of that erosion, and it may be something that farmers can look at for their land, and also thinking from a local authority point of view, I have a lot of areas in our rivers in our areas, sorry, that have these kind of issues. I'm just wondering if it's something you would look at doing a bit more with local authorities. It seems quite a sensible option.
Yeah, no, definitely, Keith. In fact, I was speaking to a guy up at just outside Inverurie on the Uri committee. They're doing a wee bit of riverbank restoration, and certainly the coir is part of, I would say, an overall solution. It can be used on the bank, and then the logs on the side of the bank. And another sort of option they use is using old trees where they bury the roots into the bank, and then again that's letting sediment build up behind the old trees, and it's naturally sort of starting to build up. But the coir would then be used possibly on that embankment to help vegetation establishment. But certainly it is part of a bigger maybe solution, using other products along with the coir matting and logs.
Thank you.
No problem.
Well, thanks for that, Sean. I mean, slightly facetious with my question, but could Could you layer it so you could fill potholes?
I wish you could.
Yeah, so do I.
Yes, that would be great from a sales perspective across the UK, but I'm not quite sure that would work.
Okay, well, thank you, Sean. Thanks for a great presentation, and I hope you find it useful for yourself. You can continue in the meeting if you want, or you can just go and get on with your day. It's up to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much all for your time. It's been very good joining you today. Thank you.
Thanks again, Sean. We'll see you again.
Thank you.
Thanks. Right. Keith, can I ask a wee bit of advice? Do we have Aberdeen Andrew Booth in attendance? I can't see him.
Yes, I believe he is here.
Yeah, he is here. Yeah.
Great.
There is. I see his handsome face, shall we say. Thank you.
Well, I thought you were talking about me, but my camera's off at the moment. Okay, item 5. Aberdeenshire's Gluten-Free Oat Company presentation by Andrew Booth, Oat Co Scotland. Andrew, do you have any slides that you want to share? Is everything organised?
I do, yes. Happy to share if we can.
Thank you.
Is that working for you guys?
I can see your screen, yes.
Right. So, good morning, and Keith, thank you for the invite from Keith. Keith and I have known each other for probably too long. He's clearly hasn't got as many grey hairs or balding as much as I. Maybe if he'd opened an oat plant business, he might be looking slightly different to what he does today. So, delighted to speak to you guys. Obviously, some Kent faces around the screen, and just talk to you about one of our latest adventures in Aberdeenshire. So I suppose go back historically, we used to have a farm shop called The Store, which we ran up until 2017. And when we closed it, we decided, I missed the idea of, the passion about food and drink in the area and local produce. And about the same time, myself and a friend of ours decided we would look into doing something with oats. But probably to give you a little bit more background, for those who don't know, we're Savick and the Booths are 6th generation farming business. We started many years ago, back in we were on council land, rented land in Aberdeen City Council, around about Northfield area. And then in the 60s, my grandfather and father bought Savick here at beside Newborough at Foveren. So we're 10 miles north of Aberdeen. We grow cereal crops, which are our standard oilseed rape and wheat, mainly has been historically probably for white spirits, but in the last couple of years has been more for animal feed. And again, barley again has been for malting, but probably less so this year and the next year with the reduced demand. We grow energy crops for an AD plant on the farm. We have a 2.5 megawatt AD plant that produces gas straight to the national grid. So that plant will provide about enough gas to feed about 6,500 houses per annum. And we also have our gluten-free oats as well. We own, rent and contract farms just north of 4,000 acres, pretty much within a 7 to 10 mile radius of where we are. We've commercial and residential property on the farm, although just with the current climate is less active than we would maybe like that to be. We've about 12 full-time employees and seasonal guys across all the businesses. And as I said before, we're the co-founders of Scotland's only accredited gluten-free oat mill. We'll talk a bit more about that. So again, this is a bit more about the business. It's quite diverse. Everything from the farming, the contract, the renewables, Oatco, and some commercial property. But our vision is pretty simple. We want to treat the land as if it's our own, whether it is our own or not. We want to maximize output while improving soil health. This is a real drive for us, and the oat plant has been the oat and the AD plant has definitely helped that through various reasons. So in terms of the oats, and we'll get on to that a bit more, the rotation is very much a tradition. Well, it's grass and oats only in the rotation, and then the green fertilizer that we're taking out the AD plant is going back in the land. So that's made a huge difference to some of our heavy land that we're farming around about here. If we feed on fertility back into land, as I was saying, we want to sell as much produce as we can direct to the end user, whether that's a ton of renewable crops or a ton of oats direct to a consumer or the supermarket. Capture as much of the value through the production chain and just remove our kind of reliance upon commodity, the fluctuating world commodity price as much as possible. Develop our underperforming assets we have on the farm. Ultimately we need to be profitable, and especially in today's climate, even being sustainable, wanting to be profitable, but you can't be green unless you're in the black. And be very proud of what we achieved. We're a great team of guys and girls here, and we want to be proud of what we do. So I said, just what we grow: wheat, barley, also gluten-free oats, rye, and then grass. So the grass has been a great addition to our rotation, because being a traditional arable farm, putting grass into rotation hasn't really got much of a use. We don't have a huge amount of livestock, but by putting grass in the rotation that we can then harvest for the AD plant into the ground for 3 years lets us, does wonders for the soil. And 60% of the crops we grow are for non-commodity markets. So it's just making our business more resilient, we believe, going forward. So the Oatco, so we're the co-founders with the Russell family. So myself and my wife Debbie, and then Charlie and Jill, who parents are Charlie and Jill own the family farm, bought the family farm at a White Cairns. His father had a haulier and a grain storage company at King's Seat. Charlie currently also is the farms director of a large estate in the southwest of Scotland that does dairying and renewables and such like. Charlie's piece when we're doing presentations to customers and supermarkets is that he's got two constants in his life. One is growing oats, and the other one is me. He never knows a time of not knowing me, which I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. And this is it's a strong friendship, but a strong business relationship as well. Our kids are great pals and everything, and that's been probably the first time we've really got involved in a business with other people, and that's it's tested as well, but it's good. We worked our strengths, and we wouldn't have done it had we not gone this journey together. We were being dedicated to oat growers and gluten-free growers probably for the last 20 years nearly. Before we had our own plant, we were supplying another processor that was for gluten-free oats. And we've got a dedicated processing capacity. So I suppose it was probably back in 2017, over a couple of bottles of red wine, that Charlie and I came up with this genius idea. And by 2019, we'd come up with a plan. We dug the ground, and then we were commissioning the plant in January 2020. So as much of our farming business was not affected by COVID, and because our daily job continued on, the biggest challenge we had was probably commissioning the plant. And it probably pushed us back about 12, 18 months, because suddenly we had customers lined up who suddenly couldn't come and see us, wouldn't come and see us. So that really struggled to get our foothold. And when we first started, we were just business to business. We were basically selling 25 kilo bags or tote bags to further manufacturing in the bigger world of the gluten-free world. But we are one of only 2 dedicated gluten-free factories in the UK, and we're the only one in Scotland. And probably to give you just a bit of background, what makes an oat gluten-free? Well, oats are naturally gluten-free, so that's a great start. But contamination and reducing the risk of contamination is what we do. So by having grass in the rotation, we don't grow any other cereal crops in that rotation. by having dedicated machinery. We'll just, so this is a bit more about how come it's gluten-free. We've got the grass and the rotation. We're big adopters of precision technology in terms of growing the crop. So we treat, it probably is a little bit that oats in this, are often grown as an also-ran crop, but we treat it as we treat any one of our cereal crops. And so precision farming is high in the agenda. We've independently test that crop inspection through the year. As I said, oats are naturally gluten-free, but where the contamination can come from? One of the biggest threats of contamination is wildlife. So a bird could pick up a wheat seed from a field one year, fly across, drop it in an oat field, and then by the time that field gets ploughed and turned over 2 years later, you could have a wheat plant growing up through the middle of it. So we not only inspect them, we rogue them, and during the growing season. We've also got very traditional cultivation methods. So again, that ploughing the land may not be good for the environment because we're releasing carbon, but it's good in terms of we can bury any weed seeds and such like, so we're not having to be so reliant upon chemicals. But also there is one weed called sterile brome, which also can give us, although it's not gluten-free, will give a gluten-free reaction. So if you're in a min-till, quite an English-based growing system, you've more risk of getting this brome growing up through, which will then give you a positive reaction. So we continue a traditional establishment technique. We do not use any glyphosate on our oats, haven't done for as long as I can remember. And we could, without getting into a debate of the rights and the wrongs of glyphosate, we've just put our mark in the sand that we do not use glyphosate at all. We've dedicated machinery, harvesting processes. We've dedicated storage and grain drying area sheds as well. But anything that's not dedicated will have a rigorous clean down process. And we're just in the final stages of finalising a blockchain style app that we can record all this information on. So there is for gluten-free status, there is no UK or worldwide way or a protocol or auditing system. But Canada probably have the best system, although they've adopted it themselves, and we're mirroring that. But a lot of the information in terms of the checks and the clean down processes are done on an analog based system just now, but we're just digitizing that into an app-based system. And the theory behind that is ideally at some stage with our pack of oats on a supermarket shelf could have a QR code. That takes us through to an infograph, and that infograph could be consumer-facing infograph that shows it's gluten-free. It shows, maybe the field or the combine's moving, and those kind of those elements. But it also has a second layer for the customer, the supermarket or the business customer, that they can drill down and get all our cleaning down protocols and BRC audits and such like. So that's something we're working on just now. And we use renewable energy to dry our oats. We have biomass boilers on the farm, so we're not using fossil fuels at all. So we purpose-built Oatco on a greenfield site back in 2020. There's lots. Originally we'd looked at converting one of the farm settings that we have. But realised pretty quickly that probably wasn't the best thing to be doing. So we changed the plan and built a purpose-built factory. So it's state-of-the-art. We are, as I said before, we started off as a business-to-business customer, a supplier of 25 kilos and totes to further manufacturing, mostly into England, into Middle England, where we're going into various products. We've supplied customers who've ultimately provided oats to Co-op, Morrison's. A lot of stuff go into bars like Deliciously Ella, Trek, such like. We make gluten-free, oat milk as well. Beauty products, which clearly you can see I use every day. But that was one of the challenges with that, doing the business to business, was that a lot of it was price driven, and the contracts were never really that long. And during a conversation with Tesco about 3 years ago about wanting to get onto their supplier list, they said, well, why don't you, we're just about to do a jig of our gluten-free, and we're putting out to tender. Would you be interested in tendering for that? Which we did, and it probably took about 2 years from the time of the start of the tender to actually getting on shelf. So we now supply Tesco throughout the whole of the UK and Southern Ireland with their what they call pure oats, so gluten-free oats in any purple packaging throughout the whole of the UK. So that's been a big step forward and a good contract we've got with them. So in terms of our certification, we're AA standard BRC, and we're gluten-free accredited. We're an allergen-free site, and I think that's something that there's a lot of our customers look for. That we're not producing anything else on the site, so that gives us that allergen-free site. Kosher, put a question mark beside. I don't know if I've got a question mark, but we have been kosher in the past. That was when we were exporting to Canada, and we had to get our factory blessed, and we were able to get, but the blessing had an expiry date of 365 days, so we weren't, so we're no longer kosher, and we no longer have that contract to supply Canada, because we knew it was just going to be a short-term contract because they had a bad harvest. And we gluten-free test under 5 parts per million, which is basically zero that you can't test underneath. So the UK standard is 20 parts per million to be, for gluten-free. But we choose to be 5 parts per million or less. Again, we can because we're dedicated. We're using only gluten-free product, and we don't purge. So other plants will purge their plant until they get a clean sample, keep sampling until they get it, a clean test. So so this is our retail packs, which are the Tesco one. Which are paper-based, so they're 90% paper, which again was something the customer wanted, and which is great in some respects in terms of the product. An absolute nightmare to then fold and create a packet to form the packet with, but that slowed down our throughput. But hey, that's we think there's a few things got us across the line in terms of with Tesco, and we believe that from it is not only our allergen-free status and our gluten-free status. We offered a paper pack, but also that the carbon intensity of our oats, because we use green fertilizer from the AD plant, is much less than probably any of our competitors. So that's been a real positive. So supplying, as I said, Tesco in UK and Republic of Ireland. We're just in the process and utilising one seed pod to do our new product development, so pots and sachets, and possibly oat bars as well. The pots and sachets we see happening within our own airspace and at the factory here, alongside the packs. Oat bars will probably be contracted out to a third party. And by the time the Tesco are keen for us to do pots and sachets as well, because then we would just become their sole offering for that. We're hoping to have our own brand out by Q4 2026. And you might see a little bit of Doddy's Tartan there. We're just in the final talks with My Name's Doddy's Foundation, and we'll be donating percentage of the sales to the foundation as well. With both the Russells and Booths both have a strong affiliation with rugby and with Doddy and agriculture and all that, and it just seems to be a fitting link to what we're doing. So what's Oatco about? It's about people. There's a massive growth in healthy living. Gluten-free or allergen-free products are growing at double digits every year, and celiac is definitely 98% of the market is celiac. 2% of the market is celiac. 98% is lifestyle choice. And whether it's lifestyle choice or whether it's celiac, when you get a consumer or a person within a family that is diagnosed with celiac, then you tend to get the whole family. And I think the stigma of gluten-free products being substandard in flavour and taste has moved on, and we see oats are a superfood, so it's got loads of real positives for going forward as a product. Provenance, we're big about the provenance. We believe we have the shortest a supply chain of gluten-free oats in the UK, possibly even Europe. Everything's grown between about 7 to 10 miles here, so it's a great story as well. We've had generations of expertise, and as I said about that short supply chain, we're desperately trying to get this carbon neutral status with the work we did last year on how much the carbon intensity of our oats were much more reduced than the standard one. Was a great step forward. Hopefully we'll have power from the AD plant to power the oat plant within the next year, because there's a change of ownership there, and that could be an easier private wire to do. So those are exciting changes there. And you said, year-on-year growth keeps on, doesn't seem to be dwindling at all. So yeah, so that's just a quick run through of SAVIC and Oatco, and delighted to take some questions if you have any.
I think we've got a few questions for you, but thanks for that. It's a great presentation, Andrew, and you seem to be getting going from success to success. So, Mark, you have a question.
Yep, thanks, Chair, and really interesting presentation. It really captured my attention for sure. And Peter Chapman and Ian Taylor will both tell you about the benefits of Bros for sure. The pair of them, I think my dad grew a fair bit of oats, and my job was bruising the oats for the beasts, so I do mine though. And I'll bless you, so you can hear my kosher if you like. So now I have 2 daughters that are gluten intolerant, and a very good friend of mine is celiac. So this is really interesting for me, and as far as farmers diversifying for it, and I do know how hard it is to please supermarkets. And that's probably where a lot of your grey hair has come from. Doing that, I mind how can I park a Neeps, try to make them look good for a supermarket. It didn't end very well. But the 5 parts per million, that's something else to get a hold of that. But I don't know if you can answer this, but doing all this extra work to make it 5 parts per million, obviously this for the celiacs, how much more percentage will you get for your product by doing this and having the gluten-free stamp? My other question really is on, and you might not have an answer to this one, but maybe a bit of homework for you to do. As far as your anaerobic digester, your biomass, and your push to be carbon neutral, I went on a visit to Brewdog when it was all up and going, and they had managed to become 80% cyclic, so that everything, the hot water and everything went round. And that was a really high percentage. So I don't know if you've got a percentage of where you are with that. I think it'd be a lot lower, because obviously you've got diesel, etc., all these sorts of things. And lastly, I was really chuffed is your supply line being shortest, but most chuffed about rugby, because Maloon plays rugby, and your thing that you do with Doddy is very, very good. So thank you, Chair.
So just in terms of the cyclic, that's a really interesting point. We've just engaged, we've got to a point now in terms of size of the business that we're engaging with Scottish Enterprise. So Scottish Enterprise is going to be working with us to get that exact number, which is going to be exciting for the, we put so many foundations in place to get to where we want to get to. Measuring and quantifying, I know from our carbon calculator we do in the farm, in terms of the biggest culprit in growing a crop is nitrogen. Diesel and such like is is not as, but nitrogen is the biggest culprit. So by us utilising all the green manure we can reduce our carbon intensity of the oat by, by 30 to 40%, which is huge. So yeah, hopefully with working alongside Scottish Enterprise in the next few months, we're going to get more of a number on that, and I'll be delighted to come back to you directly with that, Mark, on that. The 5 parts per million. Since you started off talking about bruisers, I get into trouble when we speak about the bruiser in the factory when it's actually a mill. It's not a bruiser, but it's the same bruiser that Weetabix use for making the Weetabix as well. So to me, it's a bruiser. But the 5 parts per million is it is a challenge, and it's it's. In fact, they had a meeting this week, the farm and the oat plant, which all work together, or you want them to work together as much. They're having this conversation about, we've got inspection and we've got our farm folders that tell us that are way ahead of what normal farm auditing folders would be, but they're not at the BRC standard. So actually, where does a farm become a BRC standard farm? And getting that information, because the guys on the farm need to buy into this, because it's dedicated. You can't just take a forklift from one shed to the next. It has to stay in that shed. That bucket has to be used with that all the time. That trailer is plastered on the side of it saying it gets used for nothing else. So these mindsets need to be built into it. So yes, all this delivers a cost. So the premium, I think the premium, what we're trying to do, and we try and do with all our non-commodity, is trying to get a steady price opposed to a fluctuating premium. So when COVID happened and Ukraine happened and grain price went up to 300 quid a ton, oats, we couldn't put our oats to 300 quid a ton plus a premium, because that just wasn't there. But if we can keep this steady price, so I think that's where we really want to get to, is that we're getting a consistent price, that we're not dealing with world market fluctuations. And I think, without getting too political and topical, one of my frustrations was I heard a politician say not so many weeks ago, when there was all chat about drilling in the North Sea, and they said, what's the point in drilling in the North Sea? It's not going to make our fuel price any cheaper. Well, that's like, what's the point in growing crops in Aberdeenshire? Because it's not going to make your food price any cheaper, because we're driven by world market prices in wheat and barley and oilseed rape and all these kind of things. So to me, it's about local, it's about provenance, it's about continue to supply. And I think, getting the supermarket on board, we were able to get this dunnhumby data. So your Tesco card is a company called dunnhumby that started off and gave Tesco all this information. Then Tesco bought dunnhumby. Well, this dunnhumby data is unbelievable. And again, through one, we were able to take that information and digest it, pardon the pun with the AD plant, but digest it into something that was more readable. And when Tesco came up, we were able to show Tesco that they'd been shorted 3 or 4 times during the year. Now, we don't know why they were shorted, whether it was a gluten scare or whether it was a supply chain scare, their issue that they had shorted on it. But what we do understand is their supplier of gluten-free oats, before we were their supplier of gluten-free oats, was an Italian company that got its oats from Scandinavia. So the oats that we're now supplying Tesco, we have not displaced any other UK company. So this is, again, another great story that this is for Aberdeenshire. And the rugby bit, it's so the rugby bit, actually, the story with the rugby, we want to get, especially the pots and sachets and that, straight into rugby clubs. And they're going to, the biggest money going back to Dodgy will be there, because they will get the biggest margin out. If we were to sell it through a wholesale, it'd be slightly less, but we want to put it into rugby directly, not just rugby clubs, but sport clubs in general, and get them to sell them as part of their own personal fundraising, while giving something back to charity. Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Braes, you have a question?
Yes, thanks, Chair, and thank you, Andrew, for a fascinating presentation there. I have 3 little questions, and I'm sorry if you answered them during your presentation. But do you grow different specific variety to what someone growing normal milling oats would be growing? Does the level of gluten vary from year to year significantly? Do you use glyphosate in the rest of your rotation?
So easy answer. The first variety, there's no varietal difference. Oats are naturally gluten-free, so we don't grow anything different to anybody else that may grow. We tend to stick to 2 or 3 varieties. So there's a winter crop variety that we use, and there's quite a new one in the spring. We changed variety a couple of years ago to a new variety that actually looks really good and is really bold and gives a really good oat. Some people come along to us and would like us, or we have the opportunity because we're a smaller company. If you go for some of the more a traditional or a varieties from many years ago, they've got higher beta-glucan levels, so we could grow that and then manufacture that. But we have looked at that in the past. We've looked at a different variety historically, again, for oat milk, because it gives you a whiter finish, because actually a lot of when folk make oat milk, they have to add in to make it look milky. So, but in terms of gluten-free status, there's no varietal difference. Level of gluten doesn't change, because gluten is basically a contamination of a gluten product. So if we want to hit, or we want to hit 5 parts or below, if we get 10 or 15, which is below the 20, we know positive release. So if that hits there, that'll end up in animal feed or at the AD plant or something like that. We won't release that product well. In glyphosate, we use glyphosate occasionally on crops, or not on crops. We don't use it as a harvest aid. So one of the things with glyphosate, it can be used either as it's a weed killer, which is ultimately what it's good for. And if we're trying to get into a more sustained min-till system where we're having to cultivate the land and generate and kill off the weeds, we still need to keep glyphosate for that process. Where I firmly believe we shouldn't be using it is what they call as a harvest aid. So it's basically, and especially up in Aberdeenshire, and maybe Councillor Chapman will have a comment on this, his opinion might be slightly different. You want your crop to be even when you harvest it. If that crop's heading straight for we've got a really short distance between that crop being on a field and in the food supply chain with a minimal of processing. So we do not want to use it at that point, and refuse to use it at that point. Again, whether you believe there's issues or carcinogenic issues doesn't really matter. That's what we've chosen for our to promote to our customers.
Okay, I have I suppose one more here. I've grown oats before. I could always grow other cereals, more advantage in good land in Angus. But one of the things about oats that I really, really made me angry sometimes was the fact that you were growing top quality milling oats and you were selling them for a discount to pig feed wheat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that really got my goat, and I had a natural aversion to growing oats because of that. But could I just say, I think you've given us a masterclass in marketing. I think this selling gluten-free oats as gluten-free.
I don't disagree with you in that. I think the challenge is it's volume, it's supply and demand. So especially down in England, if they've got a bad back end and they don't plant wheat and they want to grow a crop in the spring and they'll go and put oats in the ground and put it through, then suddenly they just flood the market for 2 years, and then that discounts it until those sheds are empty again. So that's probably more affecting any premium. It's also in limited hands. Again, like so many things, the actual processing of oats, there's probably three probably big guys in the UK that would do it all. And that also makes it a challenge to keep any premiums.
Yeah, can I maybe suggest this is entirely facetious. You might want to start bottling and marketing sewage-free spring water.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that in the South of England.
There's definitely a market for that somewhere.
Okay, thank you. Councillor van der Horn.
Yes, thank you. And yeah, it's really interesting presentation, and I particularly like the localism that's embedded in your approach. And I was going to comment on the glyphosate, which I'm not a fan of at all. And I understood at the beginning of your presentation you weren't using any, but now I see that you are using them to some degree, but you're just not using them in what I believe is one of the drying processes, for example.
We don't use them. We don't use it at all in our oat crops. We may use it in other different rotation, which is not in the same fields, in more our commodity crops. So we might use it in if we're establishing, say, oilseed rape, and we've chitted the land before oilseed rape, and we've got some weeds in there. We might use it for that, and as to kill any weeds before we. But that rotation is never in the same rotation. Those fields are very different. We have two different rotations that happen on the farm. We have an 8-year commodity rotation, and we've got a 6-year gluten-free rotation. So they're in two very different parts of land banks. So we don't use it within the. But with a commodity crop, as Councillor Braes was just saying, that when we're driven by world market prices, and you want to try and grow it as economically as possible, then for what glyphosate can do, then yes, we still use it.
Mm. Yeah, and so that basically that derailed me from a comment which I was going to make prior to all of this, which was about the Environmental Farmers Group and whether that's something you might aspire to becoming a member of, because I'd also heard in your presentation about net zero and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of tick boxes I saw there in terms of in the positive way, not in just an exercise that you seem to be committed to. So I wondered if there was an aspiration to move toward a more environmental approach beyond what you're already doing.
Yeah, I think the environment. So this is another challenge that we've got. So when we were doing the work on our carbon intensity of our crops, and we use all this green fertilizer, so we haven't bought potash for 7 years on our farm, and that's saving 70 tons of man-made potash every year over the land. We've used half the amount of a phosphate than we would normally use over that period because we're using all these green fertilizers, and we've reduced our nitrogen by whatever. So that's great. These are all fantastic things. So how can we monetize that? So as I said before, I see ourselves with 3 customers. We're a commodity customer, a renewable customer, and our oatco customer. So first things first, we're doing a big project with Diageo just now, where we're learning, or we're doing a 7-year project where we're doing a lot of soil sampling in various different fields with different rotations and such like. Now, Mr. Diageo is going to give us no more money at the end of the day. There's no doubt about that. He's not going to pay a premium for his whiskey if it's got, he just wants to get a measure of what the normal or an average, Scottish farmer is doing. So we're involved in this project not so much as to glean the information for ourselves. So we don't see us getting monetizing our carbon less intensive crop through Diageo or such like. So where's the next place? We go to our renewable customer. So this is an open door. You're selling a renewable crop to a renewable customer who then sells renewable gas. So you go to him and you say, look, my renewable crop that I'm growing, whether it's grass or rye, is less carbon intensive than Keith White's a crop, because he's supplying it to me and he's using man-made inorganic fertilizers to grow his whole crop. So his carbon intensity is higher. And my renewable customer turns to me and said, that's a great idea. If you were in America, you get paid on your carbon intensity of the gas that you're providing. But because we're in the UK and Ofgem just have a level, as long as you're below that level, you get paid exactly the same. And your green gas certificates don't get any major premium to it. So there's no benefit of selling that crop to the renewable and expecting to monetize that and get a higher price. So you think, well, excellent, we can go to our oat co and we're right next to the consumer at this point. We can turn this into something. So, we're doing a presentation to various customers, and you might have a quick conversation with a supermarket, and we'll do a presentation not dissimilar to this one today. And I'll say, we've reduced our, oat price by, or carbon intensive oat by 30–40%, and they go, well done. Didn't you do well? Now, so monetizing that, is that got us through the door, but actually doesn't pay a premium? Or has it made any difference at all? And I can't answer that question, unfortunately. Until we can actually monetize what we're doing, and as I said at the very beginning, you can't be green unless you're in the black. Until we can do something about it, it's going to be a real challenge to promote a full, environmental kind of aspect. We're doing it to as a part of our story. And especially through the oat side of things. We're doing it as part of our story to hopefully gain more customers. Does it turn it into cash? I don't think so.
No, that's really interesting, and I think it gives food for thought for perhaps some of our MSPs as well, in terms of or parliamentarians, in terms of what we can do to actually encourage this kind of farming approach. And I think that however you're doing it, to my mind, you're going in the right direction. I mean, even I was going to ask you about the inorganic fertilizers, given the geopolitical situation, and how that's impacting you. And it's good to hear that you're using less of this than perhaps other farmers are. And again, that's a step in the right direction in terms of carbon intensity and so on and so forth. So yeah, so thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Councillor Georgie, you have a question?
Thank you. Yeah, just one. I did have two, because I was curious about how you would manage disease, weeds and pests without relying on glyphosate, sorry. But you have answered that already. So thank you. And your presentation is very comprehensive. Thank you. So my sound did dip out when you were speaking about renewable energy, about your use of renewable energy. And I really think it's an important part of our energy mix. So I just wanted to understand how much of your farm's demand is met through renewable energy that's generated on site. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to clarify, so one of the challenges, in terms of controlling weeds and that in the oats, as I said earlier on, we have traditional methods where we plough. The negative part of that is we're releasing carbon. Other parts of our commodity we won't invert, we'll cultivate instead. So it's trying to get a balance between releasing carbon with putting the seeds to the bottom of a fir, against using glyphosate where you're just cultivating on the top, but then you're not releasing so much carbon. Anyway, moving on from that, we've discussed that probably enough. Roundabout renewables. So in terms for the last 10–12 years, we haven't used kerosene to dry any of our grain. So that would have been, I don't know, I can't imagine. I don't know how many litres or that would have been, what that saved us. So we're using wood chip to do that, and that's been a real benefit to the business and to our environmental credentials, our renewable credentials. The AD plant, although at this stage we are the owner. We're not the owner, sorry. We're the landlord and the feedstock supplier. That all goes to the grid. So we don't utilize any of that power or electricity. So the most economical way for that, it's the least economic way of producing turning the gas that we produce into electricity to use is you're better putting it down the grid, because you'll get far more calorific value for that. So we don't utilize that on farm at this stage. We have looked at turbines in the past. Unfortunately, we're in the flight path. We can't do turbines. We're looking at solar on some shed roofs to try and mitigate some of our power usage just now, but our big one will be for the oat plant is to try and utilize some of the gas. So what we intend to do is, rather than taking a power line, private wire power line from the gas plant to the oat plant, we'll probably take a gas pipe and then run an engine that then produces electricity. And then some of that extra electricity will hopefully put down the grid. So at this stage, it's not completely cyclical in that respect, but we're working towards that.
Do you want to come back, Georgie?
No, thank you. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Fatima. Peter, you have a question.
Yeah, indeed, and welcome to the meeting, Andrew. That's been a fantastic story you have to tell, and I take my hat off to you. You've done a fantastic job here, and you know, marketing is such an important part of any business. You've obviously got that pretty well sewn up once you're into Tesco and these other big supermarkets. But I know from my brother Robert's experiences going down that route that it can be pretty tough. You mentioned glyphosate, and I have a completely different story about glyphosate. We use it pre-harvest, virtually on everything. And if you want to go down the road of carbon neutral, I think it's important that you do that, because it saves thousands of gallons of fuel. And you know that, and I know that. But my question really is, you've obviously got into Tesco. That's a big supermarket. That's going to obviously increase sales quite a bit. Have you got room to expand your production, Andrew? You know, or do you need to start looking at contracts with other farmers to help to meet this increased market, which you obviously will have? That's the first question. And the second one was to hit the 5 parts per million. How often do you need to go and rogue the crop? I mean, I think you need to go rogue in it. Do you need to go through it more than once to hit that 5 parts per million region? So that's my 2 questions, really, Andrew.
Yeah. So thanks, Peter. In terms of capacity, we've got capacity in the factory to deal with more acres and tons that we currently have. We've also got when we built the factory, we kind of built it that if we needed to put one of the main parts of our production is, or in the factory, we have to stabilize the oat. So we have to pasteurize the oat, because as soon as you remove the husk, it goes rancid, starts going rancid. So we have to kill the enzyme. So that's done with a really cool bit of kit. Again, it's only 1 of 2 in the world that's used for oats, and it's less carbon intense, less electricity. A lot of these things are gas, the hot boxes, but this is an electric one, is a far more a less intensive way of doing it. So we've got room to expand that. In terms of growers, you're right. We've to decide on the balance of. If there's not much excitement in a malting barley price for the next couple of years, then we might convert more land into gluten-free land, which will take 3 years, and probably in 3 years' time, maybe the malting barley job will increase. So we have land in our land bank to expand. We equally want to grow with more growers at some point as well. And how we see that happening is one of the real challenges is a failed crop. So we will, and I suppose this kind of goes on to your next point, how often to test. So we'll walk the crops, we'll test them, we'll record it, such like, we'll rogue them. If it needs rogued, they'll do it again. It's inspected also by Scottish Agronomy as well, because we get a bit of independence, not just ourselves. And so we'd like to think one roguing, because now is the ideal time, especially in winter barley. It's just that point, the oats haven't booted, but you can see any rogue plants in the field. So you've really got a window of opportunity to do it, like now and probably 3 or 4 weeks' time for the spring crop. And once that's passed, we have failed fields in the past, mainly through brome, not necessarily through gluten. So but the capacity thing, what we think we will end up doing with the capacity side of things is, if we start using third-party growers, we'll build something or expand a storage network at the farm. And at that point, we can then take product in, we can sample it. We may even put it through, invest in a colour sorter. So we can, a colour sorter is a machine that when the oats go through it, it can determine the difference between an oat plant and anything that's not an oat seed, so effectively wheat, barley, anything like that, and weed plants, weed seeds as well. So by doing that, it means that we're always putting pure oats up to the factory, and we're never contaminating that factory, and we can control that within the storage facility within the farm. So I think when we do expand our growing network, I've envisaged that's what we will have to do to give ourselves that element of comfort before it lands in the factory.
Okay, Andrew, thanks for that. The only other thing I was saying, you mentioned you had a forklift dedicated, you had trailers dedicated to the oats. I doubt if you can have a combine dedicated to the oats, or do you? Or how easy is a combine to clean down to your standards? It must be pretty difficult.
That's sort of the hardest thing. It takes about a day and a half to 2 days to clean down a combine each. We used to do it with the dryers until I worked out one day it was taking something like 90 to 100 man hours to clean it, and I decided then just to dedicate dryers, the grain dryers, to with one farm that is just SAVIC is just basically purely oats. There's no other grain comes on the farm at SAVIC. It's only oats. So the combine is the hardest one. With 2 combines, sometimes one combine's not used for the first part of the harvest, and we can go straight into winter oats, and it won't have done anything since spring oats in the end of the season the year before. But we've got massive clean down processes, and then we go in and swab them. So we have these swab sticks that we have to go in, and with different points within, mainly around about the grain tank, where we will swab the tank, and that swab will then give us a positive or a negative result. And that's all the stuff that I was talking about earlier on is now recorded and digitally recorded. So we have that element. We'll also, even if that's passed a negative pass, we'll then purge the combine. So the first 20, 30 tons through the combine will go straight to the AD plant and be fed into the AD plant, and that's also purged it to get any nukes and crannies that we haven't been successful with.
Fantastic story. Thanks, Andrew. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And that sounds like a hell of a lot of work. But anyway, Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks very much indeed, Andrew. You've simply just blown my way, actually. In terms of the openness of mind, obviously marketing has been key to all this, and your experience with the shop at Fodlin would lead you down that way. But the amount of data, record keeping, accumulation, leads me on to thinking, you commented, I think there was 12 staff. How much of that is production staff? How much is management? And how much is admin? If I can break it into these characteristics. And I'll come back a little bit on the expansion side.
Right, so the staff, I suppose the 12 staff is across all businesses. And there's so the farm itself, we have 7 members of staff working the farm on a day-to-day basis. We've of different skill levels now. We've got one great girl, Heidi, who came to work for us for summer a couple of years ago, and then announced that she actually had a master's degree in food science, but loved driving tractors. So we now utilise Heidi within the oat plant. So she's our synergy between the oats and the farm. It's great. You've got somebody who understands farming and trying to get that into that oat the factory environment. So work well with her. Admin staff in the office, or a great girl Dawn in the office, who just gathers all this information from the farm and the crops and puts it all together. So in the plant, though, we have 4 operational staff, including a production manager, and then we've got part-time technical people who come in, and engineering people who come in on an ad hoc basis, plus sales. So we've probably another 7 there that run the oat plant between 4 full-time and 3 part-time on the other roles that fulfill the oat plant role, the oat production. We try and automate as much as possible, and we're looking to automate even more as we go forward and have a more just have that more skilled member, that staff in the operation side of things within the plant.
Thank you. That's great to hear. And I commented about the expansion, and your previous comment to Peter sort of answered it actually, because prior to that I was thinking, how are you able to convince other, and I'm calling them conventional farmers, to adopt as much rigorous control, rigorous machines, specific machines, because I suspect they'll say, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, so there's probably two ways of doing it. One is probably expansion through our own contracting business, because we have the machines already there, and for somebody local to us that is looking to I suppose a bit like growing tatties, Ian, so maybe just come in and rent the land opposed to because it's a premium is one way. Or if we can, get like-minded people, it has to be driven through price, and that value of the price of the oat. Going back to what Councillor Braze was saying, how do you get that premium back to the farmer, and that has to be driven through that way. Because I know I wouldn't do it unless it was a premium. So, and probably the easiest way to work it. Would I do it or not? So it would be the first way to work it out.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. I don't see any other questions. Last call, anyone? I think we're all happy. Well, as far as we can be, particularly with Aberdeenshire councillors. Right, Andrew, that was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I think we all welcome it. It's it's something that I think throughout farming we're going to have to take up these methods and look at niche markets and basically to make more money. Yeah. So thank you for that. And we hope to see you again.
Yes. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and we'll hopefully it's just getting the story out there. We're probably about Oatco being in the area and what it's actually doing UK wide. So it's a good news story.
It certainly is. Certainly is. Thank you for that. So Andrew, Keith, is there anything in the industry round report and any other roundup?
No, nothing that I'm aware of, Chair. Nothing I want to bring to the table. But just I said to Councillor Fimiter would bring him in and LCB with yourself, if that was okay.
That's fine. So, Mark.
No,
do you want
I can. What I can do is I can do a preamble on it, Chair, and I promise it is positive for it, and it's a wee job for yourself, but won't take too much writing. I promise. It's basically the motion is in support of the pig farmers, and predominantly the pig farmers are in the kind of northeast of Scotland. Is that there's some doing the borders, but I think there's about 120 big time pig farmers, and we all know about the emergency situation right now that our pig farmers are going through. And somebody said that some of the sows are costing them about £1,000 a month. And really the purpose of the motion, through yourself, if you want to call it that, is to write a letter to the Cabinet Secretary for Climate Action and Rural Affairs to consider using the underspend of the Less Favoured Area Support Scheme to give pig producers who wish to remain in the sector. There's an awful lot of them are leaving. A lot of them are facing bankruptcy, actually, I think. But it would be called an ongoing scheme and only for those who stay in the sector. It's only for him to consider it, obviously, but I do think that it would be a very positive thing if Gillian Martin used this, and it's never used. Every year the LFAS is massively underspent, and it may be something to announce at the Royal Highland Show, for example. But it's a positive letter from your good self and from the advisory group. And I think it would be a positive thing for us to do in support of the farmers in our area. I do know that the store cattle are having not a serious problem, but they're losing money. But definitely, with everything that's happening with the Spanish pork coming across, it is a massive problem, and a lot of farmers are facing very, very tough times indeed. And that's in essence what it is, Chair. So I put it to yourself, really, if you want to send this letter, the penmanship is there really in the motion, and I'm sure you can fancy it up somehow to put it across, but just put it to yourself and to the group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Findlater. Does anyone have any comments on Mark's motion? Are we all supportive of the main thrust of the motion? Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thanks very much. The main aim of the motion I would support. Certainly, the pig industry has always been a cyclical time, but these units are large and there is a huge amount of money that is disappearing out of, or hemorrhaging out of pig producing business at this particular time. I have a little bit of I have a bit of concern in terms of reallocating upland support into what would be an arable area, and it's that particular aspect I would have some hesitancy on, because it will mean there'll be support. The ELFA support will predominantly be to upland units, West Coast units. So there's a movement in different parts of the country. I think knowing just how much the underspend would be critical to convince me if that was the route to be used, the funding to be used. So that's my comments.
So just to recap what you're saying, you're just concerned about the source of funding, but not the principle.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
If I can come back on that one, Chair, as far as the information on that, I mean, the less favoured area support scheme, well, it would be focused on the pig farmers, so not necessarily the West Coast. I'm sure it's just a suggestion or a consideration to the Cabinet Secretary. I'm sure that can be sorted out, but I do know that the amount of underspend is around about 8 million quid of ELFAS. So so it's a fair amount of money, and anything that we can do to help the pig producers, because we don't want to lose that knowledge within the sector. But thanks for your support. And I'm open to changing the word into any way that the group sees fit, but I think it is a positive way forward with it. And all help gratefully received, and we can just pen it together, really. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thanks for that, Councillor Findlater. Councillor Braes, would you like to make a comment? You're muted.
My concerns were pretty much what Ian Taylor outlined there. Am I right in thinking, having just heard Mark's comment, that the idea would be to disperse that money among pig farmers whose units are in the less favoured areas?
No, it's
can't imagine.
I mean, it's purely a suggestion as a consideration as to some sort of a help for them. I think that the less favoured area right now is the pig farming industry, but all advice, because you're farmers, I'm not, I'm just a farmer's loon, and I've been talking to a lot of farmers, pig producers over this last week or so, and there is a real problem out there, and I'm just looking for one thing for the group to have a wee bit of teeth in putting forward to the Cabinet Secretary, in highlighting the problem with the pig industry, and maybe to do something. It might not necessarily be under ELFAS, it's just a consideration, but it's just to highlight the fact about the emergency situation within the pig industry. All help gratefully received for you farmers as to how you pen it and what your suggestion, but that was just as an avenue of maybe support for the pig farmers.
Okay, I'm just not quite sure, and I think I would need a fair bit of time to consider this properly. You know what? There's two things here. The pig industry in Scotland is getting to a perilous stage regarding critical mass. If it falls too low, all the plants will close, there will be no pig industry. And I think that would be a terrible shame. But I'm also aware that some of these businesses that are hemorrhaging vast amounts of money are keeping pigs, as well as being vast-scale agri-businesses. And the thought of taking money away from LF West favoured areas. I mean, the whole point of keeping less favoured areas and money ring fence for them is to keep people in there, keep farming businesses in there, and to keep communities surrounding them in the less favoured areas and remote areas.
Sorry, Councillor Brace, it's the underspend. It's not using it all, it's the underspend on it. There's an underspend on it every year. But as I say, it was purely a suggestion as to look, and I'm sure that there may be other pots of money that the Cabinet Secretary can go into, but it's just as a letter sending through, showing our support, because it's an emergency. And if I'd managed to come in at the start of this meeting, I would have put the emergency motion right at the start, and we would have maybe had more time to consider it. But because I couldn't get in contact with NMD to actually put it through standing orders the right way, and fortunately the chair and Mr. Keith White is allowed me to come under AOCB to put it through at this time. It's just that I thought that the ideal vehicle would be NESAG to actually enable us to forward a letter through. It's from the whole of North East of Scotland, and we do have a fair amount of pig farmers in this area. But I say, I do think that we should send a letter. What the contents of that letter would be is up to the group and through the chair. And I'll stop talking now, Chair, honest.
Thank you, Mark. My thoughts so far are that yes, I think we should support the pig industry and send a letter, but it's the detail of how to pay for your proposal that may be of concern, as has been discussed. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I have no problem in writing a letter to the Cabinet Secretary highlighting the dire situation of the pig industry, and the vast bulk of the pig industry in Scotland is in this northeast corner. I'll make no doubt about that. But to suggest using LFAS money is an absolute no-go. You may as well bin the thing before you start if that's what you're going to suggest, because that ain't going to happen. That will not happen, never happen. So that's an absolute no-go in my opinion, but I have no problem in highlighting the issue. There are other pots of money. It's up to the Cabinet Secretary to find the pots of money rather than us, I would suggest. So a strong letter supporting the industry, fine, but don't go near LFAS money, because if you do that, then it'll end up in a bin very rapidly. So that's my point. Send a letter, highlight the issue, and suggest that she finds some cash wherever. Thank you.
My apologies, my signal keeps cutting out. But the gist of what Peter's just said is probably correct in my view. We should send a very strong letter, but leave it to the Secretary to possibly find pots of money to create a solution. Kathleen Roberts, you're next.
Yeah, thanks. I don't disagree in principle, but sorry, I just take a slight objection to be strong-armed into position on this. I don't think we've got enough information to make an informed position on it. And is it also within the remit of this group? And I would much rather that we invited some representatives from the pig sector to speak to us at the next group so that we can make an informed decision of what support they actually require. That would be my view on it.
It's a good point, Kathleen, but we don't meet every month, it's every quarter or so. It depends on how much of an emergency we're dealing with. But yeah, we'll consider that. Councillor van der Horn.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm roughly in agreement with what's been said about the LFAS, and I don't think that's anything we should be touching in this particular situation. And I do have a comment which is somewhat similar to Kathleen's comment, which is I would have liked to have seen this before the meeting because this has just been dropped on us from on high. And I don't think it's appropriate to actually even decide this on discussion alone. I would like to see more information before making a decision on this. So right now, I wouldn't be in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. David Greer.
Chair, I apologise, I missed the introductions at the start. I'm the North East Regional Chair for NFU Scotland, and I can bring the context of the Union to this discussion. We had a directors meeting last night online, and the pig crisis took up a substantial part of that. It is a very real and very immediate crisis, and our members are describing it as the worst in their memory. So thank you to Councillor Fiddler for bringing the motion forward. I do agree with what Councillors Taylor and Chapman have said. We should not interfere with the LFA monies. That scheme has got its own issues. The underspend actually should have been allocated to LFA farmers, but the flaw of the scheme is it hasn't been updated in a good number of years. So I would endorse the call for a very strong letter and a very urgent letter, but leave the finding of the finance to the Cabinet Secretary and the Minister.
Thank you for that advice, David. I'll leave you to the end, Mark, if you don't mind, to round up. Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for allowing me to come back in. I'm grateful for David's comments. I did feel that that if we're to progress forward at any sort of speed or in a shorter timescale, some background discussions with other interested parties need to take place to gather more detailed information, detailed facts as to how the industry also wishes to progress. There's no, in Scotland there is only one abattoir slaughtering pigs, and critical mass has been spoken about. If there isn't sufficient, that particular industry would have be a severe loss as far as the North East is concerned. So I think there's a number of other things has to happen prior to, or in addition to this particular letter we're discussing at the minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Joji.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I want to echo what Councillors Robertson and Vanderhorn have said. We haven't seen any text or anything, and I'm just a bit hesitant to agree to something that I'm not fully brought up to speed with and almost clueless about, to be honest. So I think it would have been appropriate for Councillor Findlater to maybe have circulated the text beforehand. It is something that I think on principle we do agree, but I'm really uncomfortable to agree to endorse anything without seeing exactly what we're agreeing to. And I do agree with Councillor Robertson's suggestion that we probably have someone come speak to us, or if there's going to be anything submitted, it will be drafted and circulated amongst members, and we have an opportunity to comment or read what we're agreeing to before any submission is made, because at this stage I feel it's just been dropped on us, and then we're endorsing something we don't really, and I don't think that's proper process, to be honest, in general, regardless of how often we meet. So that's just my concern. So based on that, I can't support us moving forward today with that lack of information. At least that's my personal view as a committee member. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. I agree with the principle, and thanks to Mark for bringing it forward. It is an emergency. I agree with Councillor Taylor, it needs some more background discussions with the industry and those more in the know. Quite happy for that to be taken off the table. We can't wait until we meet next as a group. I think a briefing should be provided once the discussions are had, a draft letter, and just progress behind the scenes, and then the group can make a decision collectively, either by email or offline discussions. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Good suggestions there. David Greer, you want to come in again?
If it's helpful to this group, I can put whoever would like to be nominated in direct contact with the NFUS chair of the PIGS committee, who is very active in this and will happily take as long as you would like to give you a personal briefing on it.
Thank you, David. That would be very useful. Mark.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chair. And I do apologise if to Councillor Robertson if you think I'm strong-arming in this. I'm not, and through standing orders, an emergency motion taken at the start of the meeting is allowed to this, as far as I can gather, in any committee. And yourself, Councillor Joji, there was no intention to this. It just happened sort of yesterday, in fact, late the day before, when the whole emergency situation was highlighted to me and how bad it is actually getting, and I was contacted by a few people. And thank you very much, David Greer, for coming in and supporting me with this. I do think it is very important. And I'm sorry that you don't know all the information about it, but I have been contacted by my constituents that are farmers and pig farmers, and the dire situation that they're in. Waiting a quarter for to get some sort of answer will probably be too late in essence. So maybe I suggest through yourself, Chair, that we delegate it to yourself and to Keith White to have an appropriate letter. I take on board all the points that Peter Chapman and Ian Taylor have said. I listen to my betters because they're farmers. They can better than me and yourself, Mr. Brace, Councillor Brace. It was just a suggestion because I was chatting away with them, trying to find some way of helping out. But I totally agree with you, having listened to you and discussed it, because that's what we're doing, Councillor Joji. We are discussing things here and as a way forward so we can actually help these people, and that's what we do as councillors. We help people and assist them, and I think NESA, being an agriculture advisory group, is exactly what we do. And if it's any help, Jeff, on this one, if we delegate it to yourself as far as the strongly worded letter to make the most impact, and actually go with the suggestion of David Greer to talk to the chair of the pig producers to get the best result out of this. And I'm happy to do that, Chair. It was just to highlight it within this meeting, the emergency situation and the need for some sort of action from somebody. And I just thought that this was an excellent vehicle to do that. Again, I'll end with apologising to think I was strong-arming. I am not. I am just trying to support my constituents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. You make a good case. Keith.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I may just maybe then take up David Greer's offer to, is it Danny Skinner? Isn't David? And then maybe have a meeting with him, get some bit more of a briefing, and then compile a draft letter that possibly might there, and then circulate to everybody concerned for their comments and considerations. And then we can look at putting something away if everybody feels that's what we should do on behalf of the group. If everybody seems happy enough with that, we can look at that. David, so if you're kind enough just to give me direct contact details for Danny, who I do know if it is Danny, and if not, whoever would like to get in touch with myself, we can take it from there.
Thank you. I'm getting some feedback from somewhere. Sorry, quickly, David, I'll go to David first. David Brace, Greer, sorry.
Yeah, if you hang on, Keith, I'll put contact details in the meeting chat. It's a guy called Jamie Wiley, who's the national chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Brace.
Yeah, I currently serve as a Montrose councillor, but previous to that, I was a councillor for Brechin. And, you know, this critical mass business is really, really important. if we lose our last factory, that's the job over. I think we should be writing today. I wouldn't be mentioning LFA at all. We can just point out the seriousness of the situation. And of course, we are not limited to how many times we can write to a cabinet secretary. This is a developing situation. It's something we could revisit in future if we thought it necessary.
Oh, thank you for that input, Kenny. I think we need a bit more information before we take any action. So myself and Keith will look at that, and we'll see what we can do to bring something together. Councillor Joji?
Yeah, I just want to ask if Councillor Finlater will maybe be circulating his text as well, because if you're going to bring an emergency motion, we should be seeing what you're discussing as well, and that hasn't been done. So if you're happy to circulate the text maybe after the meeting, so we can see what we were discussing here as well. Thank you.
Councillor Finlater, do you have a text that you could distribute?
I did send it to Keith, but obviously I shall amend such, because as I've said, I've listened to my betters as far as the LFAS is considered, and it would be somewhat changed, but I can, through Keith, get it sent out in an email to you all if you're happy with that, Councillor Joji. It was in essence now just as a support letter, but I think the vehicle of NESAG and using yourself, the chair, and getting it having the most impact. I do appreciate your support, Councillor Brays, Kenny, on this one, but I think if we're going to send off a letter, it would be best to have the most impact and get the most information on there. So getting it from the industry expert, the chair of the pig producers, would be ideal. And again, thanks David Greer for coming in with that. I just want to see the best result really, and try to help in some way. And I do think that Jeff and Keith and David and whoever it is as a pig producers chairman, because I did hear that the chairman had resigned, but I'm not sure. But I'll leave it in your good hands to make the appropriate letter. So my text is in essence superfluous now, but I'm happy to send that through Keith, minus the LFAS. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Finlater. Right, so we are all of one mind, I hope. We will investigate further, get the information together. We'll have a look at a briefing, and I'm getting some feedback again.
Hi there, how are you doing? It's David Greer.
It's David
Councillor
Greer.
Robertson has her hands up.
Councillor Robertson.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clarify, I am in support of the letter. However, this is something broader than this discussion, because I'm failing to understand the terms of reference for this group. There are 4 different councils here, and as far as I was aware, this is a discussion group. I don't understand where the whole standing orders thing has come from. I've never experienced it on NESAG in the 4 years I've been a member of it, and I would just like some governance instruction. You can send it to me afterwards if you like, but it feels to me as if we're following Aberdeenshire Council standing orders. I'm not convinced that we've got that as part of this governance. There's 4 different councils. We all have different standing orders. So just on a larger scheme here on the governance of this committee, could somebody please send me the terms of reference?
We can do that after this meeting. Keith will take a note and do so. We have, as we know, in the past, we have written letters of support for many different aspects of farming. So it's entirely within our remit to do that. But we'll get the terms of reference to you. So, any other comments on this business?
No, I'd just like to thank everyone really on the group. Hopefully I've not stood on any toes. I just thought this would be a good vehicle and it is an advisory group, Councillor Robertson, And my intent was not to upset anybody, no matter what council you're from. We do have a constitution, I'm sure, but I'm sure Mr. White can sort you out with all of that. And it might be useful for all of us to have it and see it. But I don't really like just being part of a talking shop. I like to have action. And as far as an advisory group advising, and as the chair has said, we've sent out letters before, and this would be a positive action in my mind. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Findlater. With that, we shall close the meeting, unless there are any other comments. I think it's been a useful discussion, and it's something that's interesting. It's something that I think shows what we can do in a positive sense. Oh,
I can't hear you, Jeff.
I think we must have lost Councillor Goodall. He was complaining regarding internet issues before, so hopefully he will be back with us soon.
Well, he did. He was someone up to go, so.
Yeah, maybe the vice chair wants to close us out instead.
Is there a vice chair?
Unfortunately, we don't have a vice chair for NSEG.
Oh.
But Keith can make the thing.
Yeah, someone could be an honorary vice chair.
Kenny, do you want to come in with a comment?
Yeah, just to say that I think it's been really useful, this, and kind of reminding us all, and perhaps forcing us all to think about the purpose of this group. Because it's I joined 9 years ago, and I've never looked at any standing orders or constitution. I've just enjoyed the debates. And well, we are an advisory group, and the way I see my role, I'm sent here by Angus Council. I was appointed by Angus Council to be a delegate here, I suppose, whatever that means. And what I learn here, I advise my group on Angus Council about, just to keep them up to date on all things agricultural in the northeast of Scotland. And then the other way, it's not just councillors that sit here. We've got the movers and shakers right across the agricultural sector come to this meeting. It's very well attended by those other representatives. And well, the other bit is that, it's not one-way traffic. We don't just advise our council groups about what's going on. We also have the opportunity to advise cabinet secretaries and others about feelings of this group that's drawing from a wide, a really broad sweep of the agricultural interest in the northeast of Scotland. So it's all good, and good that Kathleen is it that brought that up too.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. Jeff, are you back?
Yes, I'm back. Apologies about that. My signal totally went. I hope I didn't miss something important. I caught the end of Councillor Bray's not speech, but comments, and I think I would agree with what I heard. So, where are we? Did I miss anything, Keith?
No, nothing, Chair. We'll maybe have a discussion offline and just reassure everybody what's happening, but about what we are as an advisory group. We're not a political group, but as you said, we have written to various ministers and industry and trade bodies in the past. And I think in terms of Councillor Findlater's motion, it is important that we reflect the concerns of the industry, and as Councillor Bray said, not only councillors but people within the trade, the industry, farmers and growers themselves, landowners, which we're listening to, and we'll invite them along here, but we're not we're not a political organisation. We're just more of an interest group, but equally so, if we see something that we know is concerning for the sector and industries, we need to bring that to various people's attention. And that would be really all this was going to be. It's not a demand for anything, it's just drawing the attention. It's well known in the sector what the vacancies of the pig industry at the moment, but again, we can't necessarily be in favour of one sector because beef can struggle, dairy has struggled in the past, so there's lots of things, and we're just there to highlight some of the issues and draw to Minister's attention the concerns of the North East, which encompasses a number of councils. So we can see how we're going to do that. As regard the Constitution, Councillor Robertson, I'm not sure we actually have anything of those in details. I've never been sent or given anything. It was purely a discussion group, this format and set up, so it's maybe something we need to think about and look at. So that will be food for thought for this as well. So we can take that offline and advise everybody appropriately when that comes across.
Thank you for that, Keith. So we've come to the end of our meeting, and we have some actions to take, which we will do in due course. And I thank everyone here for taking part in what.
Oh, we've lost him again.
Yeah, I think we lost Councillor Goodall again.
I think on behalf of Councillor Goodall and his bad reception here, maybe just close the meeting if that was okay with everybody. And thanks everybody for the contributions.